Hi, Scott. You are on mute.
Mute my audio. Here we are. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Is that better?
Yes, that's better.
Good. Well,
you see my screen, right?
I can see you there, yes. And I can see a few other people are on there as well.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna stop the screen share and
let me just, you know what, I might just close the curtain, might be better.
Yeah.
There we go. It's not too dark, I hope.
Seems okay. Yeah.
Great.
So I guess we are ready to start. I'm just gonna open the chat box. So it's 3 o'clock. I hope everyone can hear us loud and clear. Scott, if you just can say something and so we can check that the voice is clear from your side.
Sure. Hopefully you can hear me loud and clear as well. No echoes or issues with the audio. Hopefully I'm able to come through nice and clear. So it's a bright sunny day here in London. So that's why all the curtains are closed behind me. But I assure you the weather is lovely here in London. So I'm sure it's very nice where you are too, Vinay.
Absolutely. So it was a bit cloudy in the morning, but now the day has cleared, it seems. So guys, if you have any trouble listening me or Scott, please write me in the chat so we can figure it out that there's some issue. So to Scott, to welcome everyone again for this Q&A session with Scott. I'm Vinay. I've been part of the STEMPeers community, and it's a good way to connect with everyone through this activity. And I think it's going to be a helpful session for many of those who are wishing to transition to industrial jobs. So first of all, Scott, to just give you an idea of the registrations that we had, mainly from Europe, there were around 34 people, from US, 20, from India, there were 10 people, and a lot more will be listening to this Q&A session on the STEMPeers web pages. Right. So again, I thank you, Scott, for doing this. It's really nice and that you take your time and you are ready for this session. So I'm gonna tell a little bit about how we are going to take this session forward. So I have selected some topics for everyone. So we are going to talk about the job search and the available jobs for life sciences. Then we are going to move to transferable skills that are required. Then we'll talk about a little bit about applications, CVs, and cover letters. Then we are going to focus a little bit more on interviews, the hiring process, and then we can hear some tips from you regarding networking. And then the session is open for everyone to place their questions. So either you can ask directly by unmuting yourself, or you can type in your questions in the group chat, and then I'll take one by one question as they come. So with this, Scott, we are ready to start. If you want a few more words to add about yourself, that would be great.
Sure. So for people that don't know, I'm I'm a recruitment manager. I have been a recruitment manager and a headhunter previously for many years. And I work predominantly in the life science market. So I've spent the last 12, 13 years focusing, as I say, predominantly on the life science market, working with many of the key manufacturers in the industry, companies like Roche Diagnostics, Thermo Fisher. So I spend most of my time now recruiting senior positions and have worked previously on roles not just across the UK but across Europe and internationally as well. So that may be positions for graduates, PhD graduates, postdocs looking to transition into commercial or industry positions from academia. Or it might be more senior professional roles, across the various biotech, biopharma, and clinical sectors, mainly related to life science. So, in more recent years, I've spent more time coaching, helping people to understand a little bit better the recruitment process, and certainly the human resources side of the industry, and how to really candidates and really start to help people to understand how best to apply themselves to a position in that particular industry. So that's what I do. Spend a lot of my time doing now is speaking to people and helping people, advising people on how to secure the sorts of positions that they're looking for, really.
Great, Scott. So let's start with our first topic. Yeah. So
Sure.
many PhDs and postdocs who are have been in academics since a very long time, and they come to a time where they think that they want to transition to commercial roles, to industries. So where do you think they should start? And first thing, what are the different jobs that are available for the life scientists?
Sure. So, well, first of all, I think there are lots of different opportunities out there. So the first thing people need to do is to start actually asking questions about the types of roles and responsibilities that they're interested in doing. Is it that it's a technical position? Are you somebody that likes to stay at the bench? Are you somebody that's been, very, very concerned with research, in which case, and studying so much so that you are not necessarily looking for a position in the field? And I say that because nowadays a lot of positions are field based, and working from home, and now with the improvements in the digital market, we're seeing a lot of engagement roles, things like scientific liaison, medical affairs, medical communications roles are often working from home. But if you're looking at transitioning from academia into industry, you have to ask yourself the question: would I look for a position as a scientist in industry? So that would be my first question: is are you looking to stay in a laboratory predominantly, or are you looking to be more, let's say, business focused and work with one of the main departments in a business, any business? So it might be that it's a small biotech company, or it might be a large manufacturer or service provider, in which case you need to realize that you're going to be part of either the sales and marketing department, the operations department, or perhaps a more technical role out there might be something like regulatory affairs. And those are very popular roles, but they are also very sort of streamlined. So if you do decide to go into RA, into regulatory affairs, the likelihood is that you're going to stay in that particular job role for some time. There's not going to be maybe so much movement. And so, it's very important that the first role that you decide to take up when you're moving into industry is one that will potentially open doors for you in the longer term.
All right. Thanks for the nice overview, Scott. So you mentioned that many of these roles will have a home-based position, right? But I guess this is now a very interesting topic for everyone because of the COVID. There have been a lot of changes in type of work people used to do. People who are on the field have now to come back and work from home. So what do you think would be the long-term impact of COVID-19 on jobs, and especially for life scientists, how that will change?
Sure. Sure. So I think in the life science sector, we're still, despite the COVID-19 crisis, seeing growth. So some of the figures that I have are a little bit dated, but as of sort of January this year, we were seeing the strongest predicted growth in the life science sector since 2014. So, the job market is pretty buoyant. What I would say is that recruiters are thinking more and more now about how we can set up interviews over Skype and Zoom and using various platforms, and hiring managers are doing the same. I know a lot of internal recruiters for a lot of big blue chip companies are contacting me and saying, Scott, we want to hire people, but we'd like to set up video calls or video conferencing. Many of these companies were using Microsoft Teams or Zoom platforms previously, but not to the extent that they're starting to use them now. So I think we will see a major shift in the way that people recruit, the way that companies recruit. So I think we'll see a lot more video interviewing. We'll see a lot more sort of Zoom calls and digital meetings going on. Generally in the workplace, that's happening. I'm communicating with my team all the time now over Skype and Zoom. So we are in a position now where we'll see a lot more people using the digital platforms, and that makes it all the more important that you stay prepared and ready to interview, and that you look at your application, you look at your CV, and look at what you can do to promote yourself, and staying communication with the right people, the right recruitment staff, and make sure that you're in contact with the right hiring managers. So it's going to be an interesting time. COVID-19 is having a major impact, but we are still recruiting. We're just changing the way that we are recruiting, and that's something that's perhaps was discussed years ago, to be honest with you, Vinay, but just wasn't ever really fully put into practice. The idea of doing sort of video interviews is something that's been talked about for many years, and it's, I think, only in the last sort of 5-6 months, or certainly in the last 2 or 3 months, that we are now seeing companies shift their mentality towards doing video interviews, because it's, especially with such an international life science community, it's really important that we are able to access the best potential candidates across the globe. And how better to do that than to be able to interview from afar, rather than the old school way. The old way of doing things was to invite somebody in for an interview right away and assess them through maybe a 2-hour 3-hour meeting in an office somewhere, in the headquarters somewhere. That's not necessary any longer. I think companies are very tech savvy, so they're realizing that they can now gain access to a much broader, much wider spectrum of candidates, which I think a lot of recruiters are very enthused about. We're really happy about, because we can do 5 or 6 video interviews, with and also have our colleagues on hand. I could have a commercial director in Germany and an HR person over in the States, and I could be here in London, and we would be able to conduct an interview over a video platform. So COVID-19 will change things. Certainly, a lot of recruitment companies are still testing the water, shall we say, with how they conduct interviews throughout this time. And if we are having face-to-face interviews, in the likelihood that we will have face-to-face interviews eventually in the coming months, then we'll have to consider things like social distancing and think about that too. But and retaining safe practice measures. But at the moment, I think a lot of, as I say, recruiters are very enthused. A lot of hiring managers and internal recruiters are particularly enthused because they see it as an opportunity to speak to as many people as they can, and really, as I say, broaden their spectrum of candidates and really understand better what potential is out there, what types of skills are there that perhaps we wouldn't have seen previously.
Right.
You with me?
Absolutely. Thanks, Scott. So, if I got you right, the jobs or the hiring hasn't completely stopped within the life sciences industry. Maybe it has slowed down a little bit in the past few months, but the
Sure.
hiring probably will get back to maybe not to the normal levels as before, but the hiring will still happen in the next months.
We would hope so. We would hope so. Nobody knows really, but we would hope that the signs are fairly good. That come August, September, a lot of the clients and companies that I've been working with have been indicating to me that they will start to resume normal practices. When this sort of crisis is cleared. And we hope that maybe by sort of August, September, people will be able to interview again, and some of those jobs that were frozen will be back on. But no, it's an interesting time. Nobody, as I say, nobody really knows. But what I would say is that to anybody looking to, particularly if you're looking to transition from academia into industry, this is a really, really good time to start to consider your applications and reach out to people like myself, people that are in the hiring process, because we are building pipelines. We are still working to source candidates. And now, as I say, more than ever, we're in a position, because we're working from home, we're in a position to have more time to embrace new candidates and speak to candidates that perhaps we wouldn't have had as much time for previously. So as somebody who is recruiting, a lot of the time quite high volume levels in terms of roles, now is a good time for people to reach out to people like myself, to recruiters, and say, what can I do in the coming months? How can I prepare myself for an interview or for a job opportunity in maybe August, September? So I think it's interesting that we are sort of stuck at home, because it allows the candidates that are maybe not necessarily so sure of how to transition or how to apply themselves for a particular role. This is the time when they can start to think about that, and this is the time when hiring managers and recruiters have more time to engage.
Absolutely. So, Scott, you already started with the answer to my next question.
Okay.
So how to start preparation for the transition? So first thing you did say that so you start connecting with recruiters, and so Umesh is also asking, it's a very concerned to the same topic, that what is the best way to approach a recruiter? Is it LinkedIn? Is it through emails?
That's a really good
what's
question.
your opinion on that?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question. So I read that only sort of 30% of recruitment staff will use LinkedIn for sourcing candidates, because a lot of the time on LinkedIn, particularly when I'm thinking about my teams, I actually would press upon the recruiters that work in our company that they should be proactively seeking out candidates of a very high potential or a very specific skill set through LinkedIn. So, unless you're applying for a very specific type of role, and you have a very niche skill set, then contacting a recruiter through LinkedIn it is probably only going to work for you, as I say, sort of 30% of the time, and that's not enough really. So my honest response to that question would be that you need to reach out to the recruiters directly with an email introducing yourself, and make your application. I think the biggest thing for us, if I'm honest with you, Vinay, is that we receive so many applications. What makes the candidate stand out? And really, it doesn't mean that you have to have so many skills or qualifications. What I mean by that is that you need to know, you need to have done your homework, do some research on the recruiter that you're approaching. If you're going to look at a recruiter's LinkedIn, make sure that you understand what types of roles that they specialize in, so that when you are approaching them, you can indicate perhaps a type of role that you are interested in, and direct your application to a particular role that a recruiter is working on. For example, I get lots of applications from people working maybe in postdocs, or people that are just completing their PhD. They're maybe just finishing their Visa, and they're saying, I'm interested in roles in the life science industry. Well, that doesn't really narrow it down for me. If you're applying for a position and you're a molecular biologist, and you say, I've seen a role that is particularly focused towards qPCR or next gen sequencing, and you can show and demonstrate that you have experience in those particular areas, then that's where recruiters sit up and take notice. We're a lot more busy, I think, than people realize, but I think we are a lot more entertaining and open to and engaging with candidates that are taking the time to tailor their approach. I think that's the key thing, is tailoring your approach, whether it be your CV, whether it be your cover letter, and it doesn't have to be a long cover letter. Again, people make that mistake where they think that if they write a 2-page cover letter, then that's going to attract the interest of hiring managers and recruiters. But it doesn't. What we are looking for is a short summary, but a summary that is applicable to the types of roles that we're recruiting. So do your homework would be my advice. Look at the roles, really get to understand what you want to do, and then you can reach out to the recruiters that are recruiting for those roles, those particular positions that you're interested in.
Really, really good point, Scott. So we are going to come back on how the CVs and the applications should look like to stand out from the several applications that you get. So I just wanted to stress on this point, that the specificity of the position that you're looking for and the relevance of that position from your background is, I think, a very important point to think before you apply for a particular position, right? Moving on to the next point is now, so since you mentioned that there are several types of roles that life scientists can apply for, so where to look for jobs?
Yeah, that's another good question. Where can you start? Well, I think the first thing to do is to communicate with your peers and your colleagues, and ask those friends of yours or colleagues in and around where you're currently working, whether it be in academia or in industry, for their advice. That would be because if you've seen, for example, if you've seen somebody transition from academia into the commercial setting, you might, that you want to understand how they were successful and who perhaps they were in contact with, or what did they do, because there are so many roles out there that the first thing you need to do is really understand, as I said previously, really understand why you are correct for a particular position, or why you want to do. So, my first question would always be, what is your motivation? why are you deciding that today you want to be a medical science liaison? Because we get so many candidates applying for positions, and I ask them the question, why have you decided to apply for this role? And often they can't really give a good explanation. They don't know enough about the role, the responsibilities of the position. And the best way to find out about how to do a particular type of role is to ask somebody that's doing it. So if you can reach out to colleagues and friends, for many people, I appreciate that that's the starting point, but it's not enough. So that's where I would say absolutely reach out to a recruitment consultant that specializes in the profession that you're looking to gain entry to. So for example, if it is a life science position, then a recruiter like myself can give you advice and will try to encourage you to apply for the right roles. And sometimes that will be very blunt and honest advice, that you need to go away and do more homework and research better what the roles entail. You can obviously use things like Glassdoor as well. You can use tools like LinkedIn to reach out to people that you aspire to. So like any industry, really, if you see a person in a position that you think looks exciting, reach out to them and ask them what whether they might allow you to shadow them, or maybe they'll give you just a brief insight into what the role is really like and what it really entails. Because where we have a lot of issues is candidates applying for positions and not knowing, if I'm honest with you, not knowing what the role actually entails, the day-to-day of the position, what makes a person successful in that role as well. That's a particular point that I'd like to stress.
So I think,
how are you successful in a position, in a role,
right.
and knowing those details is really key.
Right, Scott. So this we are also going to talk about this in our networking point. I think this is how you start networking to get to know a particular position, right?
Sure.
So apart from the several websites, there's Indeed, there's Job Vector. Especially, I'm talking about Europe.
Too many to mention. There's Monster.
There's so many platforms.
Yeah, Total Jobs. I mean, there's so many. There's new platforms coming to the market all the time. That's why, again, I would always encourage somebody to reach out to 2 or 3 recruiters. So and really, when you're looking at applying for a job, and I go back to a point I made earlier about making sure that approach is tailored. You're better doing, it's quality over quantity. You're better reaching out to 2 or 3 recruiters that really specialize in a certain area that you are accustomed to, than generic emails, dear sir, madam, generic emails that are, or generic applications that are online, often, even with internal recruitment staff that I know and trust, they are inundated with applications. And it's difficult for them. I'm obviously an external recruiter, but internal recruiters will tell me all the time that they receive applications and they just go on a pile somewhere, that they're just filling up an inbox somewhere. So, I hear people say, well, I've made 15 applications. That's not going to do you any good. You're much better off having one application that is really tailored and really suitable to the position on offer than having 15 applications that are generic and frankly, the recruiter is going to look at and dismiss right away. Only sort of 58% of recent hires, I read, say that their job search lasted more than 3 months. So, if you are really looking and you make a job of it, so, finding a job is a job. So if you make the most of it, you should be able to find a role quite quickly. But also, as I said, when you are applying for positions, speaking to the right recruiter, speaking to specialists, and indeed making sure that your job applications are very, very tailored, are the 2 things I would say are most are probably going to give you the most success. Because again, interviews, people say to me, well, I've had lots and lots of interviews, and I think to myself, I probably in my whole lifetime have only had, less than, from myself, less than maybe 7 or 10 interviews. So, and that's throughout my entire career, because I was always very aware of what job I wanted to apply for. I would only apply for a position if I was 100% certain that A, I could do the job, and that I had researched the role thoroughly,
Right.
and B, that I have a very, very good chance of securing the position. And in order to do that, as I said, you have to do your research. In order to know that you're going to apply for a position and have a very good chance, let's say a 1 in 3 or 1 in 5 chance of securing that role, you need to have done your research, and maybe a recruiter can help you, but often you have to help yourself. So there's no point applying for lots and lots of jobs if your applications are no good. As I say, quality over quantity every time. And really, if you're going to have interviews, don't have 10 or 15 interviews. Yes, try to get maybe 3 or 4 in any given period. That's fine, but really make sure that those maybe interviews are spread out, or that you have the time to research and to prepare for those interviews. And as I say, a recruiter, as you know, will always be able to help you in your preparation. I've just lost you, Vinay. I can't actually hear you there. You seem to have gone on mute.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
So
I know
Scott,
you're back. Okay.
yeah, moving on to the next thing. As you mentioned, that you have to be very specific and relevant to the job position. It's for me as a life scientist, as a researcher, as a fresh PhD, it was always very important to find out what particular role it is. But it always happened that since I did not have any previous commercial experience,
Sure.
it was always the concern of the hiring managers that, oh, you don't have any experience, and I was not selected for a particular position. So how to handle such situations where you do not have any previous industrial experience and you want to transition?
Yeah, and I appreciate that it can be very frustrating if you're somebody who really wants to do a position, wants to do a job, and it's you're receiving the same feedback every time that you don't have the experience, and you think to yourself, how will I get the experience if the companies aren't giving it to me? And I appreciate that's frustrating. But there's a few things here. You have, first of all, you have to be resilient. So try not to take it to heart if you get to an interview and you're unsuccessful. Try to engage, certainly with the recruiters, but more so with the hiring managers after the interview process, and ask them for feedback, and ask them for what you could have done differently in that process, or would there have been anything that you could have done. Now, sometimes you need a little bit of luck as well, but this is why I say you need to have put the effort in with maybe 3 or 4 recruiters, or 3 or 4 interviews at any given time, so that you have maybe 2 or 3 opportunities in your pipeline. But the things that you can do, I said earlier, shadowing experience or work experience. I know it's difficult because often people are very busy, or you're currently working, to go out and to actually get some form of work experience. Again, recruiters though can normally help you, even if it's just going for a coffee with somebody that has that experience. Because actually in an interview, we are always looking for candidates on an upward curve. So we're quite happy to take candidates with potential over candidates with experience, more often than you would think. So but what we need to know is that you have really proven to you and to the hiring managers, you've really proven that you can that you understand the role, the nature of the role. Too many times, I think, where, and I appreciate it's a catch-22 that you have, limited experience or sometimes no commercial experience, and you're going for a job where they need commercial experience, and you might come up against other people that have commercial experience. I would often say, try to turn the negatives into a positive, because interviews are all about being positive, showing what you can do and what, contributing. So demonstrating to a recruiter why you are offering something different. And the best way to do that, when I say turning a negative into a positive, what I mean by that is, if a hiring manager says you don't have any experience, say, yes, I don't have necessarily sales experience or commercial experience or marketing experience, but I have other transferable skills, and really evaluate what those skills are, and attach them to the research that you've done. So as I say, if it's a case of going and having a coffee with a person in a commercial role. So if you want to get into a technical management position, find somebody who's doing a technical management role, reach out to as many of those people as you can, try to have even a coffee or a conversation with them over the phone or on Zoom, and establish what the role entails, how that role works day to day, and be open with the hiring manager when you're going to an interview that you have undertaken that process, that you have off your own back gone and spoken to these people. So highlight it. I often say to people coming out of the lab, transitioning from academia, you need to put that on your CV. So, shadowed a salesperson from such and such a company for, a week or a day. It's something at least that makes your CV stand out that little bit from other candidates that are out there. And then you need to just make sure that you're, as I say, doing your preparation, that the preparation for the interviews is fundamental, because hiring managers will, if they've given you an interview, that's an opportunity. That means that you can do the job. So you can take heart from the fact that that means that you can do the job. But what you perhaps need to do after the interview request is make sure that you are showing why it's for you, why you want it more than anybody else. Interviews for me are a competition. They are simply a competition. And some, if you could say you need to enter lots of competitions to win, but actually, you need to enter competitions where you have really understood what what it entails, what's going to sort of prevent you from getting that job, as much as what makes you a candidate that stands out. So think about the motivation aspects. That's really, really key.
Right, Scott. So we are going back to the we are going to go back to the interviews topics again. But since you pointed out a point on to mentioning about the shadowing thing in your CV, what else should be on the CV, and what, because everyone knows how to make a CV, how the format is, but what is it that in the eyes of a recruiter makes a CV stand out? So what else can you add to that?
Again, I mean, it really comes down to the specifics of the role. So, generically, if I said I'm recruiting for a role that is very specific to flow cytometry, for example, then you have to tailor your CV to indicate that you have extensive experience with flow cytometry. It's not rocket science. It's too often people try to put everything on the CV or everything on the application, and I see that so often from particularly PhD graduates and certainly people looking to transition from academia into commercial, that they want to try to put everything on their CV. They're listing all of their publications. If it's a very technical role, then yes, absolutely, we want to see publications and we'd be interested to know about your technical experience. But quite often people are applying for a commercial role. It might be an application specialist, or it might be a marketing position, or it might be a sales position. And they are highlighting, all of their technical publications. And you think that's really not what we're looking for here. You need to assess the job description. Think of the job description as a shopping list for the hiring managers and for the recruiters, and sort of to be quite literal here. If if the job is looking for a particular type of skill or a qualification or a typical type of experience, then they make sure that you give them that type of experience on your CV and in your application, and not try to do too much. I think that would be my best advice.
That's correct. I always had this question when I was doing my applications: are those cover letters really read, Scott?
Are they really read? They are, if they are. If, as I said, it sounds crazy, but if you were to highlight in the cover letter particular keywords or technical requirements. So as I say, think of the job description as a shopping list. So if that job description has apples and pears, make sure your cover letter has right in the keywords apples and pears. Don't give them oranges. Yeah, that's the most simple way that I can explain it. So for example, if you are looking to transition into a commercial role and you are very interested in the product management aspect of a role, let's say, then you need to highlight in your CV or in your cover letter, and they are read if you highlight in the first 2 or 3 lines, I am looking for a product management role because I have this level of because I'm motivated and because I have this experience or these technical skills or transferable skills that I believe would be suited to the role, and show that you've done your research. Too many people, write cover letters that are so generic, Vinay. I see cover letters that are so general. I almost can't believe my eyes sometimes as well, because I see cover letters that say, I'm a life scientist looking for a position in marketing, and they've applied this cover letter to a role in sales, or in,
right.
or they say, I'm looking for a position as a medical science liaison officer, or I'm looking for a project management role, and they've used the same cover letter to apply for a different role, because I guess there's the temptation to just send out the same cover letters and send out the same CV to as many people as possible. But I promise you, if you make the application tailored, if you, for example, don't say dear sir, madam, and leave it very general. Who are you sending the application to? If it is a hiring manager at Biorad, then make sure that you say, you go to the head. If you're applying for an applications role, send the role, the CV or the cover letter to the head of applications, or send the CV or the cover letter to the head of commercial, or a recruiter who specializes in recruiting those positions, and explain where your skill set is transferable. You don't necessarily have to have the experience.
Right.
As we said earlier, it's difficult, it's frustrating because people don't have experience, but you have to have a reason for applying, and you have to show that you've put some thought into it. So make it tailored, tailor it to the role that's on offer. That's the best advice I can give.
Right. So I get this point. Really, not really the size of or the pages of the cover letter and CV matter, but the content. So as specific and as tailored it is, the best. All right,
Yeah,
Scott.
and you can make it short. You could have it. You can really summarize your skill set if you're applying to a role that is where your skills on offer are suitable for the role. So
Right.
if it is a position with a particular technical aspect, make sure that that's at the very top of your CV or at the very top of your cover letter in the first couple of lines. This is why I'm applying for this role,
Right.
and these are the skills that I have that will be viable or suitable for the position.
Absolutely. Thanks, Scott. I guess we are running quite late than scheduled because we have to try to get it within one
Sure,
hour.
sure, sure.
So
Sure. So get
um,
through, yeah.
let's jump on to the hiring process, right? Because
Sure.
I think this perspective is really important to understand, because there is not much information that we as applicants or we as life scientists know about the recruiting process. One burning question that is coming up again in the chat box is,
Sure.
what is the difference between hiring of a postdoc, a PhD, or a master's? Who gets the priority? And does a PhD or a postdoc is considered as an entry level or a professional during an application? This was also one of the questions coming up in the chat.
Okay. So
What can you say?
So again, it entirely depends on the role. So again, if you have a postdoc and you have a very technical background, then sometimes it can count against you actually. So we're talking about masters. Yes, of course it can count against you if you're overqualified for a particular role. If you're applying for a position that's not going to be particularly technical, and the role is not really making use of a technical background, then why would you, the question for a recruiter is always, why would you want to do that job? We would question your motivation. So it's not that anybody's ahead of anybody else in the queue. It really depends on the roles that you're applying for. So my advice is, if you're, all of those people you just mentioned, masters, PhD or postdoc, are all, technically capable people. So, actually, it should be easier for a postdoc to apply for a position. I think the one question I would have is, if you are applying, if you're a postdoc and you've been in a postdoc for some years, you have to think about how a recruiter might evaluate your situation in terms of why would you want to move or transition into a commercial role now. So have a very good understanding of again your reasons, and be able to communicate those reasons very clearly for why you're looking to transition out of a postdoc, perhaps because there's always an inclination to ask the question whether that's someone has a contract coming to an end, or whether maybe they're running out of funding or something like that, and that's why perhaps they're applying for a role. So again, it's about making sure you do your homework. You know that the position you're applying to is one that you've really thought about, and you can explain your reasons for applying. But I think, talking about people with PhDs or masters, it's down to the individual. When you wish to transition or move into a commercial role, it is really up to you. Recruiters will not look at it, will not frown upon you because you have a PhD or because you have a master's. Quite the opposite. We are much more willing to engage with people that have technical qualifications, because it demonstrates that you have a high level of ability, first of all, but also if it's for a particular type of technical role, it might well be that you're better suited because you've got a stronger technical background, PhD or postdoc. But it's again, it goes back to, what are the responsibilities of the role that you're applying to.
Right.
If it's, as I say, if it's a role that's very immunology focused, and you're really not very strong in those areas, then it doesn't matter. Even if you've got a PhD, or if you've got a PhD, you have to highlight through, on the CV or through the application, what, and really, spoon feed the information. That would be my advice, because recruiters and hiring managers don't have time to ask you about your PhD at length. They'll want a short summary,
Right.
or your postdoc. They'll want a short summary, or your master's. They'll want to understand very quickly what your expertise is. So you almost need to be able to summarize that in a couple of lines, and then, in the application process, highlight the key words or the key technical skills that you have. And that will put you at the front of the queue, regardless whether you have a master's or an undergraduate, whether you're just a graduate or PhD or 10 years or 15 years in a postdoc. I've recruited people that transitioning certainly from academia after 15 years.
Right.
Senior guys, people have been in the lab, as a lab manager maybe for 10 or 15 years, and then decide that they want to move into a commercial role.
Right.
We are able to help those people too, but they have to have, they have to be able to demonstrate clearly why they're interested in that particular role
Right.
at that time.
A yes and no question, Scott.
Sure.
Can PhDs and postdocs call themselves as professionals?
Well, it depends what you're implying. I mean, I would say yes.
Okay.
Of course, I would say yes. But there are consequences in terms of salary wise. I think you do have to be very open minded when you're transitioning from academia into industry, because you are fresh to industry. So you might be a very, very technical professional and have a postdoc, and I would certainly say yes, you are a professional, but not necessarily in industry. So sort of you have to be open minded and make sure you do your homework. Would be my advice, because too often we have people applying for positions and they have PhDs or postdocs, and they think that they're not prepared to learn or start at the bottom, as it were.
Right.
Sometimes you have to get the experience,
Okay.
just even in the first 6 or 12 months, before you can then start to open up and unlock doors for yourself longer term. Getting in at the, it's like when somebody says to me about joining a small distribution company or a small biotech company, and they think it's better to go and join one of the much larger, big brands, big names, a GE or a Roche. And actually I say, sometimes it's better to get chucked in at the deep end with a small company and pick up that experience and learn those skills. I know, this is something we've spoken about in the past, where, you're opening up the options to yourself, because you're gaining that experience then, and remaining humble and learning and always trying to develop, so that you're presenting opportunities to yourself down the line. You're then in a position in 12 months or 18 months time, or 2 years time, to then
Right.
start applying for the roles you really want. And it
Ab-
is a sacrifice. It can be a sacrifice, but that would be the best way to achieve, where you need to have a 4 or 5 year plan. You can't just transition immediately. A lot of the time it's not so simple.
All right, Scott. So since we don't have much time, I'm not sure if the Zoom meeting will be stopped directly, because the timer set is for
Sure.
1 hour. But
Sure.
let's
We
see
can
how
try
it
to in
goes.
as much as we can, I guess.
Yeah. If there's a still interest from the audience who are live, we could schedule another session, because I'm not sure if how long this will continue. But if
Sure.
there is a general request, people who still would like to answer or get answered to their questions, you could write me in the chat box that you would like another session with Scott, and we can plan this. Since we have some time left, I'm going to take some questions from the chat box. So Nitish is asking that, so first he thanks you for your time, and he's asking how important are referrals while applying for an industry position, and how to go about getting referrals.
Referrals,
Right.
as in references, yeah. Well, do you think that means that, I mean, in terms of references from a previous employer?
Or,
Yeah.
or a current employer in that company?
References are important. I mean, often we'll see CVs and it will say references that are available at request at the bottom of the CV. I'm sure you'll know that's quite common. But no, we word of mouth is key. Networking is really key. Reaching out and making sure that you're engaging with people, and so yes, if you can get a reference and that's part of your application, then sure, yeah, we would take that into into account. I think I meant it says actually meaning internal referrals. So I don't.
Within the company, like who are
Yeah,
active in the position, or in the same
I'm not.
company but on another position.
Yeah, so I'm not quite sure what you mean by that in terms of you're in a position currently and you have an
No, so
internal.
if I'm applying for a particular position in Sartorius and I know someone who is working within Sartorius, so can I use him as a reference?
Okay, I see what you're saying. No, I would say actually that can be quite detrimental to your application at times because actually, HR are judgmental of those employees. Maybe it varies. My advice would be then again, if you have a person that you know working in a company, you just I would operate like a sponge and learn everything I need to know from that person. But then I would go through a recruiter or go to the hiring manager directly, because if you go, you don't know what that person is in their role. They're happy in their role, and the role that you're wanting to apply to might be entirely different. So let's say your friend might be doing a role that's entirely different to what you're looking to apply to, and then you say that I know this person to the hiring manager, but the hiring manager has immediately thinks, no, but that person doesn't do this job. So they associate you with the other person, and then actually that's detrimental to your application, because immediately the hiring manager thinks, oh no, I don't want another person like such and such. He does that particular role, or she does a role that's different from what I'm trying to recruit. So why would I want another person, that I'm associating with them, unless it's a very specific role. If it's a very specific role, then and you have a referral, then ask the referral if they, if it's the same hiring manager, if they can promote your CV to that hiring manager directly.
Okay.
But HR don't like it particularly. HR will want to understand your own motivation and reasons for applying for a role. They don't like the idea that you're applying, that because you know somebody, you should then gain entry. They have to be very aware of that these days. So my advice would be to speak to that person. The person can offer you a referral. Learn as much as you can from them about what the job is and how the job, what the job entails, and what they did in their application process as well. In the interviews, what types of questions came up. But go your own route or speak to a recruiter, because you can end up shooting yourself in the foot.
That's really a good insight. We have another question. But before we go forward, if we don't continue, or if the Zoom call gets interrupted somehow, I would like to thank you again first for your time. I will have a general view. If someone is or if they are willing to have another session, we could plan that. I'll let you know about that. Apart from this, we still have a couple of minutes. Let's see if this goes on. We can continue the points that we have not covered yet. And if it interrupts directly, I'm not sure if I can get back. So if not, then I already say goodbye to you and thank you for your time.
Thank you ever so much. Yeah, no, it's been a real pleasure, and we can always have another one. And if I can offer advice, or if people want to get in contact with me directly, then I'm sure you'll be able to share my contact details with them, and I'm quite happy to engage and speak to people and offer as much advice as I can, because I know it's very difficult to, especially at the moment, to apply to positions. But I, as I said at the start of this meeting, I have a lot more time on my hands at the moment, being at work, at home, working from home. So it's a good time to reach out to recruiters like myself.
Absolutely, Scott. So let's, I think most of them, they are saying that another session would be really helpful for them. So let's plan out a date, and to those who are interested in another session, I think I will get back to you probably through personal emails, because I have most of your emails, and I'll send you the details of the next session. So let's do that, Scott. We can cover up points, and probably we could entertain more questions from the audience, and continue those points in another session if that's okay for you.
Yeah, sure.
All right, Scott. Then I thank you, and I would end this session now. And let's go on with another session some another time.
Yeah, sounds good. Just let me know whenever you are wanting to do it again. We can set something up. That sounds good. The one point I would just leave you on as well is that if anybody wants to get in touch with me, as I say, feel free to email Vinay or reach out to me on LinkedIn. I am always happy to network through LinkedIn. Although I would say, as we talked about at length earlier, if you want to apply for a particular type of position, make sure you do your homework on it first. Make sure you do research before applying.
Absolutely, Scott. I really think this was a great session. We got really some good points and thoughts from your perspective. There are still some points that we would love to hear about, especially from your side as a recruiter. So as Scott mentioned, if people are interested in getting in touch with Scott, they can either write me or find directly Scott on LinkedIn. So and if and I'll let you know when we can plan another session and get back to you personally through your emails. This video will be going on the Stempiers Facebook page, also in Stempiers Germany Facebook page. So you can refer this video to your friends, your colleagues, whatever, who are interested. And if you have any questions, I'm always available for you. All right. Thanks, Scott, again. Wish you a nice remaining Saturday afternoon.
Sure.
Hope
Have a lovely weekend.
Yeah.
Sure.
All
Lovely
right.
to speak to you again, Vinay. We'll speak soon.
We'll speak soon. Thanks, Scott.
Take care. Thank
Bye.
you. Take care.
You too. Bye. Bye, guys, everyone.